This is a short video. The idea is that I'm going to tell you what I think is important in this 12-page piece, and then there will be separate pieces where I attempt to project my vision of what a really good project would be. And then you guys do what you need to. So I believe that this explains my view of history. It took until I was 50 years old that I really understood the importance of history. And I was blessed with my grandfather. He never told me about the fire. I had to learn it from my mother, that he was in a fire. So I was 15 years old when I heard about this. I never sat down with him and say, "Man, Grandpa, what was it like to lose everything?" And I would have actually heard something about that. So the letters that you have in front of you come from a collection he had somebody type 40 years later from his scrawlings. His handwriting was atrocious, so he had to actually explain to the secretary how to read them. So he had a sense of history that he needed to let future people know about what he was thinking when he was 24, 25 years old. So this is why you guys have an opportunity. You can go in your mind where I should have been. That's me at the League of Nations. I retraced my grandfather's steps. He was there in 1924. I was there in 2009. My goodness, like 75 years later or something like this. 85 years later. And the big thing was that we can connect the dots. This is from Steve Jobs' speech. If you don't know Steve Jobs' speech, well, now you do. And now you should look at it. That's the guy in 1947. How did he get there? That's what I think we can track. Because I think there were two important events. He nearly lost his aunt Theodate Pope Riddle. That would be something you could, there's a bunch of stuff on the internet about that. She designed a school in Connecticut. I'll give you those tips. My feeling is if I highlight what I think is important, you're going to get in there and say, whoa, this is important, or this is more important. I mean, what was it like to survive the flu epidemic? And then go to university 2 years later, meet a Japanese guy, and in 1940, my grandfather, George, his brother, who's an engineer, they went on a beach trip in Tokyo. They went to visit his friend Takei, and let's go to the beach. And George was selecting landing sites. Let's take a picture of this one over here. This looks like a beautiful beach. Yeah, right. And then all of this was playing up to 1947. If you look and see what George Marshall was doing, he was recently appointed Secretary of State when he spoke in front of this group in 1947, January 1947. And when you start looking into the history about what happened, right, when, on that what do they call that thing? The Marshall Plan. That was announced in in June 1947. So the question is, how can we connect these dots? And then the end of this big long letter is just to make sure you've read Steve Jobs. I mean, that's an important thing. So I invite you to do some hits on guide on the side, just so you have an idea of some of my educational philosophy. And you also have tips on how to contact me. I certainly would appreciate it if you visited, there he is at age 25, right? Building International Bridges, all right? That's George Marshall, right? And at the bottom of this document, you're going to see, Harvard speech. So how do you find this thing? Well, I think you go to Scribed, right? Scribed.com. And then you type in Students Oxford Academy, Brooks Emeny. Couldn't be anything that would actually have all that in it, right? I'm guessing. I don't know. What do you do? Go to Scribed and you type students. Sorry to make you go through this. Oxbridge. Wonder how little you have to type in to find it. Academy. Maybe Brooks. Let's see if that's enough. Let's see if that pops it up. Maybe. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. Bam. So we got my phone number, 954-646-8246. What's going to stop you from actually calling? My thought was, why do I even need to come up? If a bunch of you actually starts working on this, you could contact me and say, hey, Mr. Steve, let's get going on this. I mean, we want to have a really cool, obviously there's more work here. The pile of letters it covers up to 1965, so you really need to focus in on what your project's going to be. But we have several interesting letters. That there's the people-to-people era from 1956 to 65. That's one era of his life. And then obviously there's this 1924 to 28 League of Nations time. So I think those are two really important times. And then, 1947, that era, sort of 40 to 47. What was it like to be a father during that war, preparing for the post-war period? What was that like? So look forward to hearing your ideas of what we can do. 954-646-8246. My idea is when I show up, you guys are going to tell me what I said in this video and on that document there. I'm going to be asking you, you tell me, what do you find valuable in there? We can move the conversation along. In fact, just call me now and tell me. 954-646-8246.